Imagine that you're in the 16th or 17th century. You're passing through the town square. A crowd has formed. It's an angry crowd. They're facing a man locked up in a pillory. He stares at the crowd, his head and arms locked in place. The crowd throws bits of garbage, rocks, or rotten vegetables at him. You don't know this man. You can only see the sign that's been hung around his neck. The sign indicates some minor crime, some moral failing. Do you proceed to shout at this man? Do you hurl a piece of rotting vegetable at him? Even if you wouldn't do that sort of thing, would you stand and watch? Would you hurriedly go on your way? Or would you stand in front of this man, tell the crowd to get lost, to suffer in this man's stead, taking the fury of the crowd onto yourself? Throughout all of human existence, scenes like this have played out. Don't be so quick to say that, as a modern human being, you would never participate in this behavior. While we no longer have pillories and we no longer throw rotting vegetables at people, we do have the same dynamic at play in our society. It's just that we use modern methods. Ethics is, at its core, about our responsibility to others. It's about asking what harm is being done, who is affected, and what action is owed to the people involved. It's slow, messy, and invites some level of cost to oneself, even if that cost is just the time it takes for consideration. It is a deeply personal thing. But what if one could offload ethics to a crowd? What if the question becomes, how does this make me look? Who agrees with me? What would my silence signal to others? This is where ethics becomes performative. Performative ethics isn't about reducing harm. It's about being seen by others as good or righteous. One reason why performative ethics seems good is because it deals with concepts like accountability, responsibility, harm, and solidarity. It's about instant justice. But it changes what those words mean. Accountability becomes visibility. Responsibility becomes alignment. And solidarity becomes unanimity. Harm becomes something you need to be seen to oppose. Silence is interpreted as complicity. Performative ethics make things moral by making them public. There's a feeling of satisfaction when you act as part of a crowd. You are seen as taking action. You are demonstrating that you share the values of everyone else. The shared casting of blame lends a seeming sense of clarity to all involved. We all agree that we are better than the accused. But clarity obscures or even eliminates one of the core tools of ethics, personal judgment. When one applies judgment to an ethical situation, the process of taking action or inaction is ponderous. It's supposed to be. Lending weight and credence to the appearance of harm must come at the cost of one's time and energy. You must deal with uncertainty. You must sit in discomfort. You even hesitate. Performative ethics short-circuits all of that. The crowd has come to its conclusions. All you need do is make a good showing that you agree with them. The point isn't to decide for yourself what's right. It's about letting others know where you stand with them. And once ethics becomes something to be demonstrated, Any disagreement will be perceived as a threat because it is perceived as an attack on identity. Crowds don't just punish the dissenters. It rewards those who conform to it. And in performative ethics, one conforms to the crowd through acts of conspicuous display. See what I'm doing here? See how virtuous I'm being? One is expected to speak at the right time, to say the right thing, to adopt the right opinion, to avoid asking the wrong questions. Even if you choose to do nothing, to say nothing, there's a worry that the crowd might notice. People will start muttering about your moral virtues or lack thereof. But even worse, what if you speak up in dissent? People will think the worst of you. They will assume complicity with the accused. So if you speak up, you'd better be on the crowd's side of the issue. So you speak up. You participate. You make sure you say the right things. Because to do otherwise is to invite risk upon yourself. That's not ethics. That's self-protection. In modern times, the pillory has taken another form. Cancel culture. I'm not going to defend or attack cancel culture here. I'm not even going to discuss the slogan. What I will attempt to do is examine it through the lens of performative ethics. It's about raising one's social status instead of attempting real ethical repair. It's about being seen to be virtuous. The louder you shout, the harder you shake your fist, and the more people who see you do it, the more allies you gain. You and the others are on the right side, but you try to stand out as the rightest. You'll feel respected, maybe even admired. People will listen to what you have to say, as long as you're saying the right thing. Performative ethics speeds the process of moving from accusation to punishment. Accusation is perceived as judgment. Public condemnation is perceived as action. Exclusion is perceived as accountability. Shaming feels like justice. But performative ethics doesn't call upon the crowd to ask, what is proportionate? Does this address harm? Does this make redress possible? Instead, it asks, are we condemning this loudly enough? The spectacle becomes more important than addressing the harm, and punishment becomes public theater. The performers become the protagonist in a play about outrage. The accused is natural villain. When performative ethics occurs, several things are lost. First of all, proportionality. Not all harms are created equal. Yet with performative ethics, when the loudness of the protestations garner more social status, the harm is often elevated to match the volume of the crowd. Thus, all forms of harm are flattened into a nuance-free zone. Every harm must have the maximum level of attention. Every harm must result in the loudest response. Secondly, intent. While intent doesn't absolve one of harm, it does factor into the repair of that harm. Performative ethics treats intent as excuses and evasions. Since the focus on harm raises the fury of the crowd, any attempt to explain what happened is brushed off as unimportant. Lastly, we come to repair. The crowd, not caring about intent, will also not be able to act to repair or rehabilitate harm. The crowd isn't interested in healing or addressing harm. The goal is simply to mark someone as an outsider, someone to be shunned. Once that happens, the crowd's responsibility is finished. Performative ethics serves the crowd, not the ones who have been harmed. It reassures the members of the crowd that we are good, we are on the right side, we acted. But because of the lack of repair to the harm, the crowd didn't act responsibly. Without repair to harm, the crowd did not address what they gathered for. They simply arrived, accused, pilloried, and left. Meanwhile, those who received the harm have only a small, cold comfort that at least the accused got ostracized. What if you stand up for the accused and ask for proportionality, ask for an explanation of intent behind the harm, and speak of calming things down? Well, the crowd has ways to punish any dissenters. Once ethics becomes a public performance, dissent is perceived as complicity. If you question the response, you're assumed to be saying there's no harm. If you ask for nuance, you'll be accused of excusing the wrongdoing. If you hesitate, you'll be accused of being on the wrong side. So people tend not to ask questions, not because they don't have them, but because the ire of the crowd could be focused on them next. So silence becomes a self-preservation action from the witnesses in the crowd who may feel uncomfortable about what's going on. The lesson is clear. Don't ask for explanations, don't ask the wrong questions, and don't try to seek nuance. Listen, caring about harm is not performative. Anger is not performative. Speaking what's in your heart in public is not performative. What makes ethics performative is what it transforms those into. If public condemnation replaces judgment, it's performative. If signaling replaces discourse, it's performative. If punishment replaces repair, it's performative. The problem doesn't arise when people speak loudly about harm. It comes when caring loudly is done for its own sake. Performative ethics feels good for a reason. It's easy to do it. It comes at no cost to you. The crowd provides clarity about who the villain is, and it provides a sense of belonging. And, if you do it vociferously enough, you might improve your social standing with your peers. But ethics was never meant to be comfortable. It was never meant to be safe. It's not for making you popular. Ethics is messy, uncertain, and it often comes at a cost. So between a messy, uncertain, and costly option, and an option that leaves one safe and without cost, people often go with the second option. Here's the question performative ethics doesn't ask. Are we addressing harm? Ethics is about reducing harm. Ethics is about figuring out how to repair that harm. Ethics is about making future harm less likely. These questions do not play well to the crowd. They are slower. They require reflection. They don't trend. You can't turn them into a meme. I'm not suggesting that we stop condemning harm. What I'm suggesting is that performative ethics is about condemning the accused, leaving harm unaddressed and unrepaired. Ethics is not about who you stand against. It's who you take responsibility for. And that responsibility doesn't end when the crowd disperses.